I let out a bitter laugh. What was the point of a family like this? Good thing I was worried about my sister's safety, I said coolly. So, I planted a small hidden camera on her nightstand before I left. Jocelyn's face went white. Jocelyn's face drained of all color. The fake trembling and pitiful sobs catching in her throat, like shards of broken glass. 1 second, she was the poor violated victim. Her clothes torn, her cheeks streaked with staged tears. Her body curled on the floor, as if she'd endured the worst violation imaginable. The next, she looked like a ghost who'd just seen her own grave being dug. Grayson, still red-faced and fuming, ready to lunge at me with his bare hands, froze mid-snarl. My parents, their expressions hard with unearned judgment and blind loyalty, blinked in unison, the scolds dying on their lips. The room that had been roaring with rage and accusation fell so silent. I could hear the distant hum of the building's ventilation system, a low, steady drone. That underscored the terror spreading across Jocelyn's face. For years, I had lived with a primal, unshakable fear of being framed. It wasn't a casual anxiety. It wasn't a minor quirk. It was a survival instinct, forged in elementary school, when a teacher tried to make me the scapegoat for her own carelessness, sharpened in corporate offices, where colleagues and managers looked for anyone to blame for their mistakes, honed to a razor edge by a lifetime of being the disposable one, the easy target, the person no one would believe. That fear had curdled into something almost pathological. And need to document everything, every word, every action, every interaction, every glance. I recorded conversations before they started. I filmed rooms before I entered them. I saved screenshots, backups, timestamps, metadata, GPS coordinates, and server logs. Like other people saved photos of vacations or birthday cakes. I didn't do it to be invasive. I did it because I knew down to my bones that sooner or later, someone would try to destroy me, and I intended to have every single piece of evidence, to watch them burn. When the Sterlings found me, the biological family that had abandoned me at birth, and replaced me with a stranger they'd raised as their perfect, adored daughter, I knew the danger would be greater than anything I'd ever faced. This wasn't a disgruntled accountant or a lazy teacher. This was a family worth billions with connections, power, lawyers, and a lifetime of believing that the girl they'd chosen, Jocelyn, was better, kinder, worthier than the real daughter they discarded. So I prepared. I had custom clothing made, every button, a tiny high-definition hidden camera programmed to record 24/7 and upload footage to an encrypted cloud server offshore, untouchable by anyone but me. Every pen in my bag, every notebook in my drawer, housed a voice recorder with a 30-day battery life, activated by sound impossible to detect. Without a full sweep, I screen recorded every work chat, every email, every Slack message, every Teams call. I used my years of self-taught cybersecurity skills to hack into Apex Industries 188 office cameras, bypassing firewalls and admin passwords, routing the live feed to my personal devices, and a dozen offline hard drives. I didn't just watch, I archived. I categorized, I time-stamped, I backed up. I was ready for them to lie. I was ready for them to frame me. I just didn't realize how far Jocelyn would go to make sure I took the fall. The coffee incident had been child's play. She tried to paint me as a jealous, vengeful imposter, jealous of the life she'd stolen, willing to poison her with a milk latte to eliminate her. She'd sworn on her own health, sworn she'd never ask for such a thing, sworn she'd kneel and beg if she lied. I played her own voice back to her clear and unedited, then the video proof, and watched her world crumble in front of the entire office. Jocelyn was not one to accept defeat. She was a girl who'd spent 20 years living a life that wasn't hers, learning to lie, to manipulate, to perform vulnerability, so convincing. Even the people who'd raised her couldn't see through it. Losing once wasn't enough to stop her. It only made her more desperate. So she'd up the stakes. Bar the fake friends, the sleazy stranger pressuring me to drink. The friend who gave me a fake address. The apartment that wasn't hers. The staged assault, the torn clothes, the fake bruises, the performance of a lifetime designed to make me look like a monster, who had lured her to a strange place, abandoned her, and hired someone to ruin her. All out of jealousy. All to take back the life she'd stolen. And my family, the Sterlings, the blood relatives who should have protected me, ate it up. Grayson had dragged me from my bed at dawn, slapping me across the face, so hard my ear rang and my vision blurred. My mother had struck me again, without a word, her face twisted with hatred, as if I was the one who had hurt the girl they'd chosen over me. They'd hauled me to that fake apartment where Jocelyn lay on the floor, a masterpiece of fake suffering, and accused me of unspeakable cruelty. They didn't ask for my side. They didn't listen to reason. They didn't care about proof. Jocelyn was their daughter. I was just a gutter snipe from nowhere, the intruder who had ruined their perfect little lie. But they'd forgotten one thing. I always documented everything. I stood in the middle of the chaotic room, my face stinging from 2 slaps, my body still thrumming with the shock of being dragged from my bed, and stared at Jocelyn, my expression cold and unimpressed. Fake fear, the fake horror, the fake innocence. None of it worked on me. I'd seen it all before from better actors, from people who had less to lose. "You look terrified," I said, my voice calm, even devoid of any emotion.
"Good.
"You should be," Grayson roared, struggling against my parents' grip. "You psychotic bitch. You planted a camera. You invaded her privacy. You're sick." "Invading her privacy," I repeated, a humorless, bitter laugh escaping my lips. "I'm protecting myself from being framed for a violent crime I didn't commit. If she just told the truth, none of this would be necessary. But she doesn't do truth. She does performances. She does lies. He does framing the person who actually belongs in this family." I turned my gaze to my father, the man who shared my DNA, the man who should have been my protector. "You keep talking about how Jocelyn is your daughter, how you raised her, how you know her character. But you never raised me. You never knew me. You don't get to judge me for surviving when you left me to drown." His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. There was no argument against the truth. Jocelyn pushed herself up on her elbows, her voice trembling, still trying to cling to the victim act. But her eyes were wild with panic. "That's not fair. I didn't do anything. You set me up. You wanted to ruin me." "I didn't set you up. I said you set yourself up."
Let's talk about the night step by step.
"And we'll use the evidence to fact-check every single one of your lies." I pulled out my primary phone, the one with unlimited storage and military-grade encryption, and unlocked it with my fingerprint. The screen lit up displaying a grid of video files, all labeled with timestamps, locations, and names. The room watched silent and tense as I tapped the first file. The video began to play. It was footage from the button camera on my blouse, recorded the second I walked into the bar. The audio was crystal clear. I watched as Jocelyn sat surrounded by her so-called friends, all of them sneering and mocking me. The second I walked through the door, their voices played out loud. "So this is Jocelyn's long-lost sister. A real step down. Told you. There's a world of difference between city folk and country hicks. Who cares if she's the real heiress? She has 0 class. I don't know, guys. She looks like she could be a good time. Wonder if she had to sell herself to make ends meet." The camera panned to the sleazy man who approached me offering a drink, his tone luring and aggressive. My voice calm and polite played. "I'm allergic to alcohol. Thank you." His angry retort followed loud and hostile. "What the hell? You think you're too good to drink with me?" Then Jocelyn's voice, sickly sweet, manipulative, designed to pressure me.
"Come on, Vera.
"If you don't drink, it means you're still mad at me, doesn't it?" My blunt reply. "You're right. I am still mad at you." The video showed me turning on my phone's camera, addressing the entire table, my voice steady and firm. "Just so everyone is aware, if you're pressuring me to drink results in any adverse health effects, under state liability laws, every single one of you could be looking at an assault charge." The room fell silent in the video, just as it had in real life. The group went quiet, their smirks fading, their desire to taunt me vanishing instantly. Jocelyn's venomous glare was captured perfectly clear as day. Before she turned back to her friends and resumed drinking, I paused the video and looked at the Sterlings. That's the first hour recorded, time-stamped, unedited.
No cuts, no fucks.
Just what happened. Jocelyn invited me here to humiliate me in front of her friends. She pressured me to drink. She let them insult me. This was not a peace offering. This was an ambush. My mother's lips thinned, but she didn't speak. Grayson's face was a mix of anger and doubt, the first crack in his blind loyalty. I tapped the next video file. This footage was from my pen. Recorder activated. The second a friend approached me to give me the fake address. The woman's voice was friendly, almost caring as she said, "The Sterling estate is way too far from here. It's not safe for 2 girls to be out this late. Why don't you just take her to the apartment she rents nearby?" She gave the address clearly, slowly repeating it twice, so I could write it down. The video showed me nodding, thanking her, then helping a heavily intoxicated Jocelyn to her feet. Jocelyn was slurring her words, stumbling, barely able to stand, her breath reeking of alcohol. I didn't wait for them to process the video of the friend giving me the fake address. I swiped left on my screen. "And now," I said, my voice cutting through the thick silence of the room, "the finale. The nightstand camera." Grayson flinched. He looked like a man waking up from a coma to find he'd been the villain in his own dream. My mother was clutching her pearl necklace, so tightly her knuckles were white. I pressed play. On the screen, the grainy but high-definition night vision footage flickered to life. It showed the interior of the bedroom in the fake apartment. The timestamp was 1:04 a.m. The video showed me helping Jocelyn onto the bed. She was groaning, acting dead weight. I placed a glass of water on the nightstand, right next to the hidden lens, and pulled the duvet over her. I checked the windows, checked the door, and then left the frame. The sound of the front door locking clicked audibly. For 3 minutes, Jocelyn lay still. Then, at 1:08 a.m., the drunk girl sat up. She didn't stumble. She didn't sway. She sat up with the precision of a soldier. She looked at the door, listened for a moment, and then threw the covers off. "Watch," I commanded the room. On screen, Jocelyn walked to the mirror. She stared at herself, her face devoid of the teary vulnerability she was currently displaying on the floor in front of us. She reached up and grabbed the collar of her expensive silk blouse. Rip. The sound was sickeningly loud on the recording. She tore it down the middle. Then, she opened her purse and pulled out a small makeup palette. With the focus of an artist, she smeared dark shadow under her eye and along her jawline, blending it to look like a developing bruise. "Makeup," Grayson whispered, the words strangling him. It's makeup."
Wait, I said.
"It gets better." On screen, Jocelyn messed up her hair, pulling strands loose. Then, she did something that made my father physically recoil. She walked over to the nightstand, picked up a heavy glass ashtray, and smashed it against the corner of the table. She took a jagged shard and deliberately, calculatedly, scratched a thin line down her own forearm, just deep enough to draw blood but not deep enough to be dangerous. She winced, then smiled. A cold, reptilian smile. She pulled out her phone and dialed. The audio picked up her voice perfectly. It wasn't slurred. It was sharp. "Grayson? It's me, oh God, Grayson, help me. She left me here. These men, please come." She hung up, dropped the phone, and curled into the fetal position on the floor, arranging her torn clothes to look maximally tragic. She lay there, blinking, forcing tears to well up in her eyes, waiting for her audience. I paused the video. The silence in the real room was heavier than lead. I looked down at the real Jocelyn, who was still on the floor. But the act was dead. She wasn't trembling anymore. She was staring at the phone in my hand with a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. It was the look of a trapped animal realizing the cage door was locked. "You missed a spot with the eyeshadow on your jaw," I said, breaking the silence. "It's smudged on your collar. Bruises don't transfer, Jocelyn. Makeup does." Grayson made a sound, a guttural, wounded noise. He looked from the screen to his sister, his hands shaking. "You," Grayson choked out. "I drove here doing 90. I thought you were dying." "She wasn't dying," I said dryly. "She was directing." My father stepped forward. The patriarch of the Sterling Empire, a man who could crash markets with a frown, looked old. He looked at Jocelyn, then at me. "Vera," he started, his voice cracking. We didn't know." "You didn't want to know," I corrected him. "There is a difference." I tapped my phone screen one last time. "By the way, that upload wasn't just to my cloud. When you dragged me out of bed, I activated a distress protocol. This footage has been automatically forwarded to the precinct's cybercrime division and my personal attorney. The police are about 3 minutes away." Jocelyn scrambled backward, hitting the wall. "You called the police?" she shrieked, her voice shrill and ugly.
Dad.
"She called the cops on me." "I called the cops to report a violent assault," I said calmly. "Since you claimed there was one, I'm just being a good citizen, helping them find the real perpetrator. Which, ironically, is you, filing a false police report, defamation, and attempting to frame me." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The steady drone of the ventilation system was swallowed by the approaching justice. Part 2. The collapse of the House of Sterling. The next hour was a blur of blue lights and legal jargon. When the officers arrived, they found a chaotic scene. Grayson was sitting on the sofa, head in his hands, catatonic. My mother was trying to wipe the bruise off Jocelyn's face with a handkerchief, crying hysterically when the pigment came away on the cloth. Jocelyn tried to spin it. She tried to tell the officers the video was a deep fake, that I was a hacker. But the physical evidence, the makeup kit still in her purse, the shard of glass with her blood on it, was overwhelming. I gave my statement with the cool detachment of a corporate auditor. I handed over the flash drives I kept in my pocket. I showed them the timestamps. Jocelyn was led away in handcuffs. She didn't go quietly. She screamed, cursing me, cursing the Sterlings for not saving her, revealing the depths of her entitlement. "I'm the daughter you wanted," she screamed at my parents as they shoved her into the cruiser. "She's nothing. She's a rat." I stood on the sidewalk, the morning sun just breaking over the city skyline. The air was cold, but my cheeks still burned where Grayson had slapped me. My parents stood a few feet away. They looked like strangers. Vera, my mother whispered, reaching a hand out. We need to go to the station. We need to get you a doctor for your face. I took a step back. I have a doctor. And I have a ride. A sleek Blacktown car pulled up to the curb. My driver, hired independently, paid for by the dividends of the stocks I'd quietly bought in rival companies, stepped out and opened the door. You're coming home, aren't you? My father asked. It was a plea, weak and pathetic. Home. I laughed. A sharp, jagged sound. I don't have a home, Mr. Sterling. I have a residence. And you aren't welcome there. We made a mistake, Grayson said, standing up from the curb. His eyes were red. I hit you. I don't know how to fix that. You can't, I said. That's the thing about breaking trust, Grayson. It's not a vase. You can't glue it back together. You chose her. For 25 years, you chose her. You don't get to switch sides just because the winning team changed. I got into the car. As the window rolled up, I saw them standing there. Billionaires, powerful, influential, looking utterly defeated by a girl who simply remembered to hit record. Part 3. The Corporate War. The weeks that followed were a media firestorm. The Sterlings tried to keep it quiet, but the police report was public record. Heiress Frame's long-lost sister. The tabloids ate it up. Apex Industries stock took a hit. Investors were nervous about a family so dysfunctional running a global conglomerate. That was my opening.
I didn't retreat.
I went to work. I walked into Apex Industries every day wearing tailored suits that cost more than my first car, my hidden cameras still recording, though now people knew about them. The fear in the office was palpable. No one gossiped. No one slacked off. They knew I saw everything. Jocelyn was out on bail, confined to the Sterling estate, stripped of her titles, but still dangerous. My parents were trying to play peacemakers, sending me flowers, emails, begging for a dinner to talk things through. I ignored them all. I was busy digging. Jocelyn's hatred of me hadn't started when I arrived. It started years ago. I found the financial discrepancies in the charitable trust she managed. Millions donated to shell companies. But I found something worse. I was going through the old server logs from the year I was born, archives that were supposed to be deleted but were merely hidden. I found emails between my father and the agency that facilitated Jocelyn's adoption. It wasn't a random adoption. They hadn't just found Jocelyn after I was kidnapped or lost, as they claimed. The dates didn't line up. They had started the adoption process before I disappeared. I sat in my office, the glow of the monitor illuminating the dark room. My parents hadn't just abandoned me. They had replaced me preemptively. They wanted a specific look, a specific pedigree that I, a colicky, sickly infant, didn't provide. My disappearance at the hospital hadn't been a tragedy to them. It had been a convenience. The rage that filled me then wasn't hot. It was absolute zero. I wasn't going to just put Jocelyn in jail. I was going to dismantle the entire Sterling legacy. Part 4. The Gala. 3 months later, the annual Apex Gala was held. It was the event of the season, designed to reassure shareholders that the family was united. My parents practically begged me to attend. Please, Vera, my mother had voicemailed. We want to announce you as the new vice president. We want to make it right. I agreed. But not for the title. The ballroom was glittering with crystal and false smiles. I wore a blood-red gown, wired for sound and video, naturally. Grayson stuck to my side like a bodyguard, trying to atone. He intercepted waiters, glared at anyone who whispered, and treated me like delicate glass. I'm sorry about the board meeting, he muttered as we stood near the champagne tower. I didn't know Dad had signed those waivers. Grayson, I said, looking at the stage. Stop trying to be my brother. You're an acquaintance I tolerate due to shared genetics. He winced, but before he could reply, the lights dimmed. My father took the stage. He looked tired. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is about family, about resilience. I want to introduce my daughter, Vera. The microphone screeched. Suddenly, the massive projection screen behind him, meant to show charity photos, flickered. It wasn't my doing. Jocelyn walked out onto the balcony, overlooking the ballroom. She looked deranged. She had cut her hair jaggedly short. She was wearing a white dress that looked like a wedding gown dragged through the mud. You want the truth? Jocelyn screamed, her voice amplified by a headset she'd hacked into the system. You want to know about the Sterlings? On the screen, a video began to play.
It was a recording of me.
But it was doctored. It was deep-fake footage of me conspiring with corporate rivals, admitting to planting the drugs on Jocelyn, laughing about destroying the family. It was high-quality AI generation. She's a fraud. Jocelyn shrieked. She faked the evidence. She's the monster. The crowd gasped. My father looked panicked. I didn't panic. I touched the brooch on my dress, a haptic control. Override, I whispered. My system, which had been dormant inside the Apex network for months, woke up. I seized control of the AV system in 3 seconds. The deep fake video cut out. Since we're sharing home movies, my voice boomed over the speakers, overriding Jocelyn's headset. Let's look at the emails from 1998. The screen changed. It displayed the adoption contracts, the dates, the correspondence. Subject: replacement infant. From William Sterling. Body: the current child is defective. She cries incessantly. We need the candidate from the agency ready by the 15th. We will handle the hospital transfer/loss narrative. The ballroom went silent. A silence so profound it felt like the air had been sucked out. I walked toward the stage. My father was frozen, staring at his own words from 25 years ago. My mother had fainted into a chair. I looked up at the balcony where Jocelyn stood. She wasn't screaming anymore. She was staring at the screen, realizing that her narrative, that she was the beloved daughter and I was the interloper, was also a lie. She was just a product they bought because they returned me. We are both victims, Jocelyn, I said, my voice calm, projected to the entire room. They threw me away like trash and they bought you like a luxury handbag. You hate the wrong person. Jocelyn looked at me. For a second, the madness cleared. She looked at our parents, the architects of our mutual hell. Then she lunged. Not at me. She vaulted over the railing, aiming for the stage where my father stood. Grayson moved. He tackled my father out of the way, but Jocelyn landed hard, crashing into the podium. Chaos erupted. Part 5. The Throne of Ice. 2 years later. The office was quiet. I liked the quiet. The hum of the ventilation system was the only sound in the CEO's suite on the top floor of Apex Tower. I signed the final document on the tablet. The acquisition was complete. The Sterling Family Trust was dissolved, its assets restructured under my holding company, the SEC. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over the city. Jocelyn was in a private mental health facility in Switzerland. I paid the bill every month. It wasn't out of kindness, it was control. She would never want for anything, but she would never be free to hurt anyone again. My parents were retired in the Hamptons. They had practically fled society after the gala. They sent letters. I never opened them. They were archived in a storage unit, unopened, unread, just in case I ever needed evidence of harassment. And Grayson? There was a knock on the door. Come in, I said without turning around. Grayson entered. He looked different now. No more arrogance. He wore a simple suit, working as the head of the charitable arm of the company, the only division I allowed him to touch. The quarterly reports are ready, Vera, he said respectfully. Leave them on the desk. He hesitated. Mom asked about you. She's sick, Vera. It's her heart. I turned around. My face was impassive. The scars of the past didn't show on my skin, but they were woven into my DNA. I have the best cardiologists on retainer for her, I said. Her medical bills are paid. Her house is maintained. She wants to see you. Just once. I looked at my brother. I looked at the man who had slapped me, the man who had defended the lie until the truth was forced down his throat. He was trying, I knew that. But effort doesn't rewrite history. I am a Sterling, I said quietly. We survive. We conquer. We document. But we do not forgive. I tapped the small camera disguised as a button on my cuff, a habit I would never break. Tell her I'm busy, I said. I have an empire to run. Grayson nodded slowly, accepting the distance that would always span between us, vast and cold as the ocean. He left the room. I turned back to the window, watching the city lights below. I was alone. I was feared. I was safe. And I had it all on video.